Hey, how are you? I said something funny the other day. Well, I thought it was funny. Um, I sort of was talking, well, there's a lot of change in my life at the moment, lots of thoughts, lots of different things that I need to work through. And I'm not one that's really good at change. I haven't been my whole life. Whenever there's been new things, even if they're small things, and it's a repeated change, I still sort of struggle through it. But the other day I was talking to somebody and sort of said, I really hate change. Um, and I was sort of made aware that at that point in time, the person laughed it off and sort of said, not in a bad way, but just laughed it off and sort of said, most people don't like change. And I suppose, sometimes you have to hear these things to really sort of realize that that is actually true. Not There's not probably too many people that like change, not enforce change. Maybe there are people out there who like to take as they say, take change on, do some things differently, and in that sort of way, they might like change then. But I think when change is forced upon us, it can be quite difficult. And I think there are a lot of those. I've done change management courses myself, so I do know a little bit about change. It's never really helped me, even knowing that sort of stuff, because it still has the same sort of impact on me, regardless of what's sort of happening. But I think the biggest thing that I sort of realise around change, and that is true for me, and it's probably true for a lot of people, is you have those roller coaster of emotions that come with it. And they normally can be classified in quite a generic way, because they are normally the same each way. It just depends on what the change is, and which one of those emotions can be a little bit stronger at which points in time, and also the time frame that you're going through this. Sometimes the time frame, depending on the size of the change or how much you're invested in the change, can be really small. And you'll just go through those emotions really, really quickly, or you might just hit the peak ones. Sometimes when it's a really life-changing change, which is funny, it can then be a little bit more elongated in terms of those things. But change has a way of bringing out probably four main emotions, and they don't necessarily always go in that same order, but they do sort of come across. One is denial, one is anger, or what's the name? One is fear, and then finally, hopefully, if you're lucky enough, you might have some sort of acceptance or ability to sort of move on. And so when we talk about change, those are the main emotions. There's probably others that come in as well, depending on how the change has happened. There may be frustration, because you could see it happening in the previously, so you know what's going on. But there might also be other levels of some of those emotions that I just mentioned. But I think those are the main four that most people sort of go through, and they can be in different sort of ways. I think with denial, if we look at that one first, it's really about the disbelief. Why is this happening to me? What am I going to be impacted? I shouldn't be impacted. This change shouldn't impact me. I should be all right. And those sort of things. And then really sort of saying, oh no, this change is not going to have any impact. I'll be fine. And trying to sort of avoid it. Maybe even to the point where you sort of don't admit that this change is happening. Really, some people, and I have been in that previously as well, where I really sort of think, no, this change is not going to happen. It's just something they said, and they could be whoever it happens to be, and you're really in that sort of mode where you don't want to admit that this change is going to happen. The next emotion, maybe not in sequence, but certainly in step, is really around that anger, and that can sort of again, depending on how much you are impacted by this change and how much of a life-changing thing it is, the anger can be quite high and quite strong. And sometimes it's good to listen to that anger in terms of understanding what's driving it, because that might give you an indication as to why this change is so difficult. I recently had quite a bit. I'm likely to be made redundant in my job after 6 years. And I really did feel like that there was quite a lot of anger there. And I had to sort of break that down first to understand what that anger was about. And I think there's a couple of things there for me as some of the effort that I've put in that may not have been recognised. That maybe this has come. I was happy to something like this to happen, but maybe it's come a little bit early, so it's not in my control. Even though maybe in a few years time, I might have liked to have changed jobs or done something differently. Is probably anger at because I run a team, that my team is impacted. It's not just going to be impacting me. So I have a reputational thing there because I've told that team that this team and this work that we're doing is just going to continue on and there won't be any problem. So there's a reputational thing there for myself as well. So I sort of feel like I've done wrong by my team, even though this change has not been driven by me, it's been driven by other people. And then just anger at the situation, that why did it come to this, that, who's stuffed up? Because if it's not me that's driven this change and somebody else has driven it, then who's stuffed up that made my life, that I had to change my life, because it's not something that I did. So that anger can be found out in a couple of different ways. And the anger can also come from how that change is handled by those people who are instigating that change. So if they're being quite sympathetic, or they're being quite kind, or they're being at least respectful of the people who are going through the change, then sometimes that anger might not be directed at them. If some people are sort of saying, "Oh well, glad it's not me," or "It sucks to be you that you're at the end of it," then that anger can come out in probably quite a different lot of ways. And are directed at those people who are possibly saying those things as well. So I think that that anger can sometimes be really quite powerful. And I think if you actually look at anger and see what's driving it, it might give you a bit of an understanding of the things that you have to sort of think about when you finally contemplate going through that change. Because it's likely to happen. It's likely to continue on. It's not like people say these things and then they sort of, "Oh, no, we're just joking. We don't actually need to do anything." It's more likely that you will still need to go through that. And if you can understand what is driving that anger through that change, it'll make the experience a lot better for yourself, because you'll know what the things are that you need to do. And then you'll also be able to work with the people who are doing the change to make it a little bit more easier for yourself and maybe others around you as well. And sometimes, as they sort of say, you don't need to shoot the messenger. Sometimes the people who are doing the change are not the people that sort of said, "We need this change." Sometimes they might be. And so sometimes if they are being respectful, then maybe they're also just trying to do the right thing by you as well. So that anger can be big, and so you really need to sort of hone in on that. And then what you have then is sometimes you'll have the fear component come in as well. It's sort of like, what am I going to do after this change? Is it going to be all right? Because you won't know until all of it's done whether the change will work out properly. So then a lot of fear elements come into that change as well, because you're really sort of like, well, is this going to work? Are we going to be okay? Whatever happens, if I take my example here, in terms of this redundancy, the fears that come up are, am I going to be able to provide for my family? The age I am, will I find another job? What can I do? And then the whole thing around, as I've previously done in videos, the imposter syndrome. Well, nobody will want to take me on. Because I'm, too old, I can't do my job, they don't like me there, and so on and so forth. So all those fear elements come up, and then that normally triggers a little bit more anger as well, because it's then like, why do I have to change? Why do I need to go through this process? I was quite happy where I was quite happy doing the things that I was doing. Mightn't have been happy every day, but most of the stuff that I was doing, I was content with. Why do I have to be the one that has to change it suddenly? So that those angers and those fears, they feed off each other, and you need to be aware that they are doing that. And a lot of times, again, like with anger, you'll have to understand what that fear is driving and whether those things that you are thinking when you're fearful are actually truthful. Will I find another job? Well, it might be difficult at the moment, but it might be okay as well. But I don't really know. I have got no evidence at this point to know whether it will be good or it won't be good. So that's it. And then I think the final emotion is some sort of an acceptance. And this might be when you take a little bit more ownership of that change, because you sort of say, okay, I'm not going to let this change define me. I know I have to go through it, but what do I want out of this change? If I am going to have to change jobs, or if I'm going to have to move away from where I'm comfortable at the moment, what do I want to do with this, and what do I want to get out of it? So then you're starting to go down that acceptance mode. You probably still feel the other three emotions coming. Sometimes you'll still go back into denial. Why do I need to go through this? Then anger will come up again and sort of like, stuff everybody, I'm just not going to be a nice person to be with and stuff like that. And then the fear of what you're missing out, maybe the colleagues that you won't see again, the team that you're working in, that you like to work in, even just the location because you like where you work. All of those, I won't be part of that anymore. All of that sort of stuff comes up as well. So you're constantly going through those emotions, right, as well as maybe accepting and making small decisions as you go along. So I think as you go through change, it's not something that anybody really likes to. I don't like change. I've said that already. But when you go through change, be ready for those four emotions, and that they constantly crisscross you. A lot of times with change, people say you've got to go through the process of squaring it in your head. And I think that is important. And sometimes you do need to take that time to be able to understand your emotions around the change, the anger, the fear, the denial. What are all those about? So that you can actually move through into acceptance, but also move through in a positive way. Sometimes it'll be very difficult because there's a lot hinging on that change, or a lot of things that could happen, and so that makes it difficult as well. But in most cases, you'll be able to understand why you're concerned about that change, and then hopefully be able to make sure that those things are dealt with in a systematic and a practical way, so that you can make the change in a more meaningful way for yourself as well. So again, you're driving that change. You're being active participant in that change. You're not holding it back, or you're not holding yourself back as well. So change is going to happen always, but just make sure that you become an active participant in that. Voice your concerns, understand your own feelings, and then be an active participant in that change moving forward, so that you can get the best outcome for yourself. Anyway, look after yourselves, take care of yourselves, and I'll talk to you later.